Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. We are going to be diving into our mini workshop on Delegation Mastery. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about what strategic delegation is going to look like for you and how you might free up some extra time in your schedule and get some things off of your plate, help you be more effective. So with that, let's take a look at some of the areas that we'll be covering today. I'll let you take a quick little gander there. And let's just jump into what does it look like in this epidemic of busyness that I think we're all able to relate to. But what we're hearing a lot from leaders is that they're just simply too busy to succeed. Really? Let's talk about how we can correct that. So leaders today are sharing in a lot of areas, particularly some studies that we are keeping tabs on from McKinsey, from PI, from Harvard Business Review. Executives have this consensus that they are spending way too much time on pointless interactions. It's really draining. It's producing this information overload that is really impacting their ability to be effective leaders. Some of the statistics are very sobering and very concerning. So what we are hearing is that only about 10% of managers feel like they're spending their time in a really purposeful, meaningful, committed way. That means 90% of managers are feeling really ineffective, right? They're not getting down to the business of leading. Another statistic that we are hearing is that about 60% of managers simply feel that they lack time for their own training and development, that they're not investing in what does it mean and what does it look like to be more effective leaders, okay? And additionally, about 8 in 10 managers say that they're really at a risk of burnout, right? They are ineffective, they are tired, they are unengaged, and additionally, about 70% of these leaders and managers would actually just prefer to go back to their individual contributor roles if they could get the same pay. So we really are at an epidemic. And there is a significant consensus around executives as well that they see this burnout downstream within their leadership ranks. So there is something really important here that we need to be focused on, but how can we correct this? So with that, what I'd like you to do is in the chat, think about the best delegator that you've ever worked with. Okay. What made them so good? We'd like to spend a few minutes here and hear from each of you on what great delegation looks like to you. That's great. Candace, they gave me autonomy. Mm-hmm. Really important. That's a huge factor in delegating effectively.
Juan says leverage strengths and passions of the team. That's great.
Absolutely. People are feeling invested. They're contributing. They're giving their whole self.
Clear expectations for results.
Right. What are we aiming for? What does good and excellent look like?
We've got a couple more along the same lines. Priority lists, trust, clearly defined roles and expectations. Someone's mentioning credibility. So definitely that trust and relationship and being clear about what's delegated. They trust me to get the job done.
We're hearing a lot of themes here, this trust, this autonomy, this expectations, clarity. Okay. Took time. Yep, took time to invest in my future, took time to invest in me. They cared about me. They invested in me.
So I'm hearing a bit of more than just delegating busy work, but delegating meaningful work, I think is the underlying tone of that last one.
Yes. That has a real impact. Mm-hmm. Okay. So taking this just a step further. Oh, Gabriella, thank you. clear step-by-step training and figuring out the details for myself to make it more efficient, avoiding micromanaging.
Really
Right.
great.
Very, you're touching on some key things that we're going to be delving into here at the latter part of our time together. Dave felt like they were developing me, not just dumping their tasks on me. Okay, so thank you all. So with that, let's go a step further. What was the impact on you and your team when you had this delegation that was working effectively for you?
We've got identifying where my time could really be spent on. Talked about building trust. I felt empowered. There was open communication, better quality output. Great.
Exactly.
Ability to plan, empowerment. You're able to self-manage. Autonomy is coming up again.
Mm-hmm. These are great. So there's a lot of themes here, right? This feeling engaged and empowered and trusted and clarity.
Mm-hmm. And Mitchell says, I had control over how the work was completed. That's just going to lead to better job satisfaction, right? Again, not feeling micromanaged, but having control over your own work. Great.
All
Thank you
right.
for sharing, everyone.
So these are great insights. And this, again, will lead into where we're headed today. So we've just kind of discussed, what does great delegation look like? But let's delve in for just a moment. What is the cost of not delegating? Number one, leaders' hours are going to go up, right? They're working more and more than ever, and leaders don't get paid overtime, right? So it's personal time, it's professional time that's going into leadership activities that may not be that effective. And they're spending less time on effective leadership traits and activities such as coaching and communication and strategy. Similarly, at the same time, these leaders' satisfaction and engagement is going down. Okay. Leaders, like we said earlier, they're getting burned out. They're not enjoying the job anymore. They almost would prefer to go back a step if they could keep their pay, just to reduce the stress of trying to manage it all. While leaders' engagement and satisfaction is going down, we would not be surprised to know that employees' engagement is equally going down, right? So if the leader's not engaged, employees are likely to be engaged. If the leader is stressed and bringing that to the team and to the day-to-day work, the employees are feeling it and they're experiencing it, right? So if the leaders are disengaged and stressed, they're not having the necessary one-on-one coaching conversations, the development conversations, the strategy sessions, those things that are critical to be effective leaders for your teams, for your organization, and importantly, the individual employees. Employees are kind of waiting around to find out, well, okay, what am I supposed to do? Because they're not engaged, they're not feeling trust, they're not feeling the autonomy to take charge themselves. So it's significant cost. So what do we do? We know the cost of not delegating. Let's delve into what is the opportunity when we do delegate effectively. So there's this exercise that we deliver in our delegation workshop. We've worked with all types of clients, all level leaders, from the C-suite, executive level, all the way down to frontline leaders. And we ask a few questions for them to begin to think, what is the cost and the hourly effect of delegation? So, first question we ask is, what are a few items that you might spend more time on if you were delegating properly? We then go into, what are some of the things that I should stop doing if I was leading effectively and properly? And then lastly, what are 3 to 5 items that I should be delegating, but I'm not currently? So we work with leaders across every industry, every type of organization, every geography. It's similar. The hourly effect of not delegating correctly is pretty consistent. So we ask these questions. It's basically a math problem. Okay. So if we were to ask you right now to enter your guess in the chat, how many hours per week do you think the average leader could gain or save if they were delegating properly? If they removed some things that they shouldn't be doing, and if they delegated properly and added some delegating, critical delegating strategic steps in their day. How many hours a week? Love to hear your guesses in the chat.
10 to 15, 13, 20, 10, 10. These guesses are higher than I thought it would be. 20, 15 to 20, another 10.
I think somebody passed all of you the answer. Usually we get, like Hiro said, much lower responses. The average that we're seeing is about 13 hours per week. And that is really tough to swallow, right? That's a lot of hours. That's more than a full day's work that leaders are losing and that they need to gain back in their day. So this really kind of caught our attention because we had to figure out how could we help kind of remedy this situation. So I know we told you there wouldn't be any math, but we did the math for you. Okay. So granted, 1 leader, 13 hours. If you had 5 or 10 leaders in your organization, 50, 100 or more, the number of hours that could be gained by delegating effectively, it is really significant. Now, let's just say that 13 hours was a little generous. Okay. Even if you got about 50% of that opportunity realized, 20 leaders, let's say, still getting about 6,700 hours back in their year. Okay. That's really the equivalent of hiring an additional 3+ leaders and having no additional expense. Again, these are very sobering numbers and things that we need to keep in mind about what's on the line when delegating is not effective. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so the beautiful thing about delegation is it's a skill. Now, there are some leadership capabilities that are kind of hard to build or develop. You know, innovation, creativity, some of those are hardwired more in individuals than others. Okay, we're talking now about the skills that every leader can win with. So, number one, delegation is really an attainable and approachable skill. Okay, it's a skill that anybody can learn with some self-awareness, utilizing some tools, having some self and personal accountability. It's attainable. Now, there is some self-interest in this if you can learn this skill because it really does improve a leader's personal and professional life. It makes it significantly easier, more enjoyable, and lighter, right? So leaders can be more engaged and lighten up the demands in their schedule if they are intentional about learning some of these skills. And what's beautiful is that perfection is not required. You can make some small gains. Any gain can be impactful. Okay. It gives leaders the room to grow and develop in time. Okay. Leaders might be on a different trajectory. So perfection is not the aim. Now, the progress is measurable. You can easily measure how many hours you're getting back in your day and also how you're feeling about it. Okay. You can have accountability with other leaders in your organization and share and bounce things off with one another about what's working, what's not, and how to be more effective. Okay. And really, delegation is the only way a leader can get more time on their calendar and put the time back on their calendar, as we say. And then lastly, there's this positive cycle of engagement, right? It creates this air of development and productivity and engagement. There's this ownership and autonomy for your direct reports, as some others have said in the chat. It empowers the team, it empowers the organization. Not to mention what it does for the leader to feel that they're actually effective, that they're not showing up at work every day dreading what they have to do, what they're not doing well, or what have you. It really is an opportunity for everybody to kind of join together and be more effective and engaged. So there's this calculator that Hero is putting in the chat. She just did. And it's a calculator that we've developed and we share and we work on in our delegation workshops. And we're going to share it with you today. I'm just going to take you through it. You won't necessarily work on it at this moment, but you can work on it later. As we shared, you want to be thinking about an item or two that you might spend more time on as a leader if you were delegating properly. What would be the impact of doing so? And how many hours would you need a week to accomplish that goal? Okay. The second one would be, if you were doing your job properly, what should you stop doing? Things that you're just accustomed to doing because it's perhaps quicker, you've always done it. Perhaps you actually enjoy doing it, but it's really not an effective use of your time. What is the impact of relinquishing that task? And how many hours a week might you save? And then thirdly, what are some items, perhaps one or two, that you should be delegating that you're not? Again, what is the impact? How many hours you're going to save by doing that effectively? Down at the bottom, you'll see your quick little calculator, easy math, no problem, you've got this. What's really, really important is that you be thinking about what is getting in your way of delegation. Why are you hesitant? Why are you reluctant? Why are you avoiding? And if you can solve that mystery for yourself, that's the goal, to being able to release and, again, take on the more critical factors in delegation. Okay, so if we don't solve for this, these obstacles will stay in your way and they will continue to kind of come back into your weekly life if you don't address what's underlying it. Thanks, Lewis. You shared about 5 hours. That's great. Okay, so that's a start. So let's talk about what's in your way. We're going to get back to chatting here again. So if you would share, oops, sorry about that. What is stopping you from delegating? We'd love to hear from you.
Go ahead and add right in the chat. What hypothetical or real do you think is getting in your way? Got someone responding, I can do everything. Yeah, I feel that. It's easy to feel like you can muster through and get it all done. If you want something done right, do it yourself. I've heard that as well. I don't have time to provide appropriate training and follow-up support. Control, I can do it faster. Again, takes too much time to train someone else. Oh, this is a good one. I don't want to give to my team anything I wouldn't also do. So a little bit of transparency and maybe feeling guilty about delegating some tasks. Feeling like it won't get done unless I do it. Don't have enough staff or resources. Avoiding having to spend more time correcting issues. So again, fear of something being done wrong. Not wanting to give a direct report a task that isn't set up for success. So again, lack of resources, lack of training. Yeah, definitely worried about the time it's going to take. These are really great. Yeah.
These are great. And there's a lot underneath of these. I love what Candace had to say about, I don't want to give my team anything that I wouldn't also do. There's a tendency for us to feel, that guilt or, and again, some of it is, and we'll get to this in a minute, about how we're wired. If our natural wiring kind of enables us to feel these certain things. This it needs to be done a certain way. It needs to be done perfect, or I feel guilty delegating, or I don't want to ask people to do things that I wouldn't do myself. There's something innate there too that we will help you get underneath, that helps you kind of relinquish some of these feelings that you have about what's preventing you from delegating. And this, like Mitchell said, not wanting to give a direct report a task that isn't set up for success, right? So we're going to talk about that in a minute. Well, how do we set up different people on our team? How do we set them up for success depending on where their developmental needs actually are? Okay. So all of you, what you shared are right on spot and right on target of what we hear in our workshops, right? They aren't ready. We're too busy. We can't ask others to do things that we aren't willing to do ourselves, right? I don't have time. I don't have time to teach them. It's slowing us down. Or I'm worried, or I feel guilty, right? Or in some cases, I just like doing this. So how do we address that? So what we have found is that all these things are legitimate, but we have to figure out how are we going to bridge the gap between these legitimate concerns and effective delegating. And what we have found is the number one strongest predictor of success in leadership is this high self-awareness score. Okay, so at MindWire and with Predictive Index, we build job models for a lot of different leadership roles. And our clients want to know, well, what is the one trait that helps leaders be more effective? It is self-awareness, right? What are my strengths? What are my gaps? How do I show up in the world? How do I adjust to the others that I'm delegating to, right? So many of you are using assessments of some nature. Perhaps it's Predictive Index. Of course, we use Predictive Index. And an assessment is really one of the best starting points to understand myself as a leader, to have this self-awareness. How do I delegate? How do I communicate? Right? What are some of the challenges that I might have due to my natural wiring? And when I look back at the chat from just a moment ago, I would suggest that a lot of our natural wiring is contributing to how we view delegating or address delegating. So we need to understand what are some of our watchouts and what do we need to overcome, right? So if you're like a super high detail person and like things a certain way, you might find it more difficult to delegate to people that you don't trust or don't have experience with yet, because you're not trusting they're going to get it done to the level of perfection or accuracy or what have you that you innately need and want. Versus, for instance, a low detail leader might be a little bit too free in their delegation and not follow up with those individuals that need and want more structure. So a perfect example of that is, let's look at Angie. She's a very low formality individual, which you would know from her assessment. Also, perhaps working with her. Very informal, right? She goes with the flow. She's pretty big on starting things, but not necessarily following through or hitting deadlines. And she's very much a big picture thinker. And then we have Maria. Maria is more of a high formality individual. She's known for her detail and need for detail. She really likes perfection, does not like making mistakes. She will do anything to prevent those from happening. She likes structure. She likes to know how to do things right. And she really thrives under clear expectations. When you understand the needs of the people that you are leading, you can adapt to those needs and delegate uniquely to the needs of the person. Not delegate from your own lens, but delegate to the lens of the individual that you're delegating to. So if we were to go a step further with Angie and Maria, because of Angie's wiring, she needs more authority and autonomy when you delegate to her, right? She doesn't want just a bunch of tasks dumped on her. Okay. Don't overload her with too much information. She doesn't need to know this, that, and the other. She just needs to know big picture. But with somebody like Angie, you'll want to be very clear on what are the non-negotiables. There might be a couple things that have to be done in a certain way, and it's not negotiable. If Angie knows that and you give her freedom in the other areas, you have a happy, engaged Angie, and you're effectively delegating to her. Maria, on the other hand, that high formality, she likes structure and guidance, right? She needs clear expectations. You need to provide her the opportunity to ask questions and ask her, what else do you need right now? And give her the freedom to check in along the way with you, and you also check in along the way with her, so that you avoid this trap of perfectionism that a high formality person can easily fall in. Okay. So it's when you understand yourself as a leader and how the mindset that you have, you will understand the traps that you fall into naturally delegating, and how to kind of overcome that with skill and awareness. So, what are some of our delegation success factors? We say all oars in the water, right? Our tendency is to delegate to the regular suspects, the people that you know that you can count on. But we're asking you to think about a delegation plan for every person on your team. They may not be ready. Everyone's not ready at the same level. So you have to cultivate that plan uniquely for inexperienced direct reports and for your high performers. Plan accordingly with those factors in mind. We also want to think about delegating authority, not just dumping tasks on people. Authority conveys trust and confidence, right? And it's a way to accelerate development and performance in your employees, right? And you want to convey that trust and confidence to get the buy-in. When you communicate, we want to communicate with intention. You want to describe, why are you delegating? Because you trust them, because it's a development opportunity. If you don't, employees are going to be curious or maybe even resentful about why you're giving them these tasks or these responsibilities, and they don't understand the context, right? So you want to describe what's in it for them when you are delegating. You also want to track your progress, right? That's easy to do. Again, ask your employees. They'll help you do that as well. Ask them what's working, what's not. And then when it comes to the assessment data, you really want to use assessment data. You want to understand what you're going to do well, what you're not going to do well, understand your own strengths and needs, and more importantly, and equally important, is understand the strengths and needs of the people you're delegating to. Self-awareness is the key. So what is your opportunity in all this? We want you to understand yourself and your direct reports. We're offering you the opportunity. We will work one-on-one with you. You are welcome to take the predictive index assessment for yourself and identify 2 or 3 direct reports. We'll sit down with you, help you gain some insights, give you some feedback, and also provide you some one-on-one coaching tips on how to effectively delegate to your direct reports, right? And ultimately, we do have a fabulous delegate workshop for our leaders. This is where we've collected all of these insights and this data, and happy to share that with you as well if that's of interest. So I know we're up against our top of the half hour here. So I'll leave it for some questions, and feel free to throw those in the chat.
Perfect. All right. Right on the dot. Great job, Mary. Thank you. So yeah, we do, Mary and I have time to hang out if anyone has any questions. You can also, you're going to get these slides and the recording after we wrap up here today, so that you can share it with your team, with any other leaders who need convincing that delegation is the path to success. We've also got another mini workshop coming up in November that I'll put a link to in the chat. It's going to be about navigating difficult conversations. So sticking with our leadership theme, another great skill that you can develop to help leaders and your team members work more effectively. All right, it looks like everyone's being a little shy with any questions in the chat, so we'll wait around for one more minute, but thank you so much everyone for joining. Really appreciate you hanging in and learning how to delegate effectively. So thanks, Mary.
Thanks, everyone.